the Creative Jungle podcast. I'm Diana.
I'm Sam.
And together we'll be speaking to Sani. Sani is an artist based in Peckham Levels. He was actually a neighbour when we were there, when we had a studio there. And I'm so excited for this conversation. He's such an inspiring, insightful person to speak with and just ask so many kind of poignant questions. And, you know, we'll be exploring how he started. He's an artist that's known for murals, oil painting, digital art, sculpture. I mean, yeah, this guy does a lot.
And the theme for the podcast is finding your creative calling and the power of art. So over the course of the podcast, which does get off to a flurry, and you'll kind of listen to Sani's energy about what he does. But we'll chat through how he found his calling, how he's been running his own practice for nearly 6 years now, what it's like to be a full-time creative, and any tips that he has for aspiring entrepreneurs who want to set up as artists, and also how creativity can be used for good, along with
the Black Lives Matter movement, of course. He's a black artist, and you know, we really kind of dive into how he's found the movement affecting his art and how he thinks art has a role to play in it as well. And you know, just he opens up so many different questions and topics and themes. I think my favorite quote from something he said before is art reflects the world as it is and has the power to reflect how it could be, which I love.
So, as we said, it gets off to a flurry. There's tons of energy, but you'll learn a lot about his persistence, his vision, how he gets inspiration, and how he can use his art for good. Be sure, before you listen, to check out @INxSANIxTY on Instagram, just to kind of get a feel for what he actually makes.
Yeah, that's INxSANIxTY.
Yes, but yeah, hope you enjoy.
Hope you enjoy it, guys. But basically, we just want to, in the podcast, just like highlight how different people are creative and how they go about making what they make. So from like small business owners to artists like you, and we just remembered you because obviously you are our neighbor opposite.
And, absolutely.
And
I'm always fascinated by, and it sounds like it happened last night as well, that you just get in a flow and just make for hours, and it could end up being 6 a.m. and then you go to sleep. Like I'm interested to learn about that. So we've lots of questions and stuff and that kind of stuff.
It's interesting because at that moment in when you're like blanking out, the concept of time is actually weird.
Yeah.
So you don't really feel like time has gone that much, or sometimes you might be doing something for so long and it's only been 30 minutes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like very weird with time, so you kind of like just kind of get with the. But the weird thing is, it does take more energy when you use your brain than physical work. So at which point you feel exhausted and tired could be like. Almost immediately you feel exhausted, tired, hungry at the same time, and you want to sleep. So, like, you can do like 3-4 hours, and and you're just like, you don't even have enough energy to go get food. You just pass out to give a couple minutes of sleep, and then you can wake up.
And then you're back again.
You wake up hungry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I used to have this theory that I basically did everything for my art. So I slept so I could wake up with enough energy to create art. I ate so I could have enough energy to create art. I talked to people so I can find inspiration to create art. I sat down so that everything was so that I could create art.
To fuel the art, I always wonder, like, I always think maybe, you know how you say it takes so much energy. Is it because you feel like you're feeding so much energy into what you're creating? It's like you're putting a bit of yourself in there. Would you say that's why?
Yeah. I would say yes, but I mean, so I feel like there are two factors. One, the first factor is when you do things physically or when you use your brain, mental capacity always takes more energy than physical. And then two, the particular style at which I create art kind of makes that longer because I usually don't know what I'm creating when I start. So what happens is there's a lot of thinking in the whole process while I'm not thinking.
So literally,
subconsciously.
Yeah, like you have the canvas. Do you even know what colours you might use, or you just literally do one action on this canvas?
More times than others, I just start, and once I start, the colours kind of come. It's a lot of, how do I put it? There's a lot of spontaneous, sharp moves.
Yeah.
So it's, for the most of the time, I'm not paying attention to nothing.
Yeah.
And then for a split second, I pick something. And then I
Wow.
use that. And then another split second. So I might be painting with red and I just feel, do something else.
Yeah.
And then immediately I do something else. But it's almost like as it happens, I do it and I just continue going. And what happens, sometimes you get to a place where you like what you see, but you don't feel like it's over. So you have to just keep on going. And sometimes it changes the complete image. And it's a weird kind of, but provided I don't necessarily think of it, it allows me to like dig deep into me and like put things in there that when it comes to the end of the painting and I'm asking myself, why did I do this? Why do I do that? It works therapeutically as well. So I can find out things about myself. Why did I paint this? Why did this power me to do this? Why was I, little things like that.
It's almost like, your subconscious and your intuition is leading the way, but like not your brain, if that
Yeah. So only on the end before I get back conscious and use my brain to try and like explain what happened here. So that's where I get the story of like, oh, this painting is about blah 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 blah. That's only after, because it's only after I was able to kind of step back and look and say, why did I do that? Why? And sometimes I find even stories that I wasn't prepared to like share with the world, or I wasn't really like comfortable about. But once it's on the canvas, I have to address it now. And once I've addressed it, I'm released from that particular
And so do
issue.
you spend a lot of time looking at things and reading kind of to get the inspiration, or like how does that work?
So I mean, you kind of described it where half of my life is paying attention to. So basically, I call it like I'm partly a people's watcher and partly a slow down and look at everything. So I live in my own world, and in my own world is me just observing everybody and every little thing. So the tiniest of things that people do in a lot of ways. That's why I kind of. So essentially, I consider my art more educational than entertainment, and I try and use like the human psychology to kind of do things with art. So for example, I know we react to eyes in a certain kind of ways. So essentially, if you look at my paintings, you will notice some of them, the eyes are closed intentionally to draw you in. Some of them, the eyes are open sharply looking at you to make you question yourself. Some of them essentially just understand how every normal human being would react to seeing a specific kind of eye, or understanding how colors work or angles and where you put people would make people think a certain way. Then I have more control into like creating something, having it in a certain way, to whether you like it or not, you're challenged to kind of project yourself onto that painting. For example, like you might project yourself without knowing. It might be a case of like you see something that makes you question something inside you. And the truth is, why that's more powerful than normal is, I think with the psychology of the brain anyway, is if you're aware of something, you can lie to somebody else about it. But from when you're aware of it, there's no way of being unaware of it inside to yourself. Does that make sense? So it's like a power is like in itself. So I guess I try and use I kind of look at it this way, the human subconscious, the psychology, the way our optics work in terms of our eyes, the way we react and feel towards colors, and why we react and feel towards colors, that's a specific way. So these are things I kind of observe, research, spend all my time doing, so that when I do create art, I don't necessarily think of that. It just naturally falls into that.
Out. Those are kind of the pillars that you use to create your art. That's amazing.
Do you find it harder in that case to do commissions, for example, where it's not as free form or not as kind of from you? Like, do you find that constraining when you're asked to do something specific, or is it just a bit different?
The way I started my art and whatever, it was a bit of a rebellion in the sense that, like, I actually have no business being an artist. I never studied art. This was kind of like just me going with the flow. And because of that, I think it allowed me a level of stubbornness. So quite early, I realized that I'm like, I'm not inspired by I try not to draw real people. I try not to paint real places because I'm not inspired to just copy something that exists already. It just doesn't really do anything for my creativity. So in terms of commissions, I'm excited to do commissions where it's like, for example, if somebody called me and told me about a person and said create an artwork based on the story. That's exciting enough because it allows creativity.
So rather than paint this person, it's paint this
Mm,
story.
I wouldn't even do it. I don't even. I tell people, and that's the beauty, I guess, of the position I'm in, because I notice with art is very funny. So a lot of people, because there's not that much opportunity, so we end up trying to grab every opportunity.
Yeah.
But I figured I could be more stubborn and direct. So when people approach me to do, like, say, a commission to paint somebody, I would usually be like, oh, no, that's not what I do. But I can give you 5 other artists that I personally know that do that.
Yeah.
In that sense, putting it over for them to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But also, more importantly, why do something I'm not inspired of? And it wouldn't be that great compared to one of these people doing it, which would not make the same. But I guess sometimes people just think, oh, this artist I know, I want the work from you, without necessarily thinking if I do that kind of work or if I don't do that kind of work.
Yeah,
So
I would never have
do that work.
I would never have thought that, but that's such a good point. But, and also, it kind of makes you more, it keeps your integrity, you know, because you're not...
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
I think, as you kind of touched on, a lot of artists, they just end up doing work for other people that isn't what their real expression. So it's good to be a bit stubborn and kind of, because what will happen, I guess, over time is you'll get the commissions that you want to do. Whereas if you did the ones you didn't, you will get more of the ones you don't. Whereas if you just be stubborn.
Exactly. And sometimes it's easier said than done. Admittedly, I know how much money on a year that I am giving up by not doing commissions, because that's the first source of artist income.
Yeah.
The first source, most of them is like, oh, pay this thing and I give you money. So by purely not doing that already removes me from the basic level of, £500 here, £300 here.
Yeah.
But what I've done instead is I'm happy to do commissions with companies.
Yes.
Where there's a few, because not only from the perspective of uninspired, with commissions, what you find, because people haven't grown to the same level of respect for artists as they have for some other jobs, they might give you something they want and then come back 2-3 weeks later to change one part.
Yes.
Or then come back another, can you also change this other part? And they don't realize that every time I change, that's material being wasted, that's all this, and it's frustrating for me personally. So what I've decided is I can do a commission if it's a company, because there's maybe 5, 6, 7 people that would decide, go ahead from the first point. And you probably won't be able to get those 5, 6, 7 people all together in a meeting in the next 2-3 weeks.
That's so
to then
true.
say, oh, change this. Exactly. So by doing that, it keeps me like, once I've done this, I can go ahead and do the work and everything sorts itself out. But I'm very particular with commissions. My main way of doing art is kind of, I do what I like, what I feel, what I want, what I know.
Yeah.
And then bring everybody in. If you like it, you get it. If you don't like it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily, what do people like? Okay, I'll do that kind of art. Or okay, I'll do that. Like, it's kind of just going with my flow, and hopefully people like it, or they don't. Like, I bring them into my world as opposed to try and fit in.
Into theirs. I think that's just so powerful, Sani, in so many ways. Like, even in like what we do in anybody's life, it's just like, do your thing, like give the energy that you want to give, create what you want to create. And I know, especially me, you get so distracted by what other people like, or will this go down well, but actually that just dilutes your power as you put,
Exactly. Exactly. It takes a little bit away once you start, because even when you feel uninspired and it starts becoming art, it's because of little things like that. See, I still have days where I wake up. For example, I have many forms of art, like there's the oil painting, the digital painting, the sculptures, the murals. Now, every single one of them, even the oil painting, started off from, like, my first cat was I was drawing always drawn, and it was a case of like, I'm going to do oil painting. So I started oil painting. Now, oil painting was primarily what I was doing. And the digital painting started off as, let me do sketches for oil paintings. Now, in the process of that, I realized I could do a lot with the digital. But that created that excitement of, I'm going to do this. And now I still, every other day, get new excitement of, I'm going to do this. Because once I did that, I then created video art based on I wonder how video art is. I want to do it.
Just explore your curiosity.
And it literally comes without too much attachment. You still kind of are like a kid, where it's like you're already known for something, and this is what you do, and this is your soul. But you can wake up like, that's cool. I'm gonna do this. That's cool, and essentially just find a way to do it. It's like I didn't need to watch any YouTube video or whatever. I just kind of just assumed, well, if I'm doing this kind of thing, if I want to do something similar, I can just play about and see how it turns out. And that's how all these different sort of forms of art kind of came out of it. So yeah, it's definitely empowering to just kind of be in your bubble and just do your creativity and let the rest of the world worry about what they like or what the name of it is even in the first place and all those other things.
Yeah,
That's
really, really, yeah. God, I'm gonna get that on my wall. I think that's such a good life lesson in general.
Yeah, it works. It allows. It's stubborn. You give up a lot, but it empowers you a lot.
Yeah.
Even when you're going through hard times, like when things are not necessarily going how you plan, like everybody else is getting commissions to do stuff, and you really want to get it, you can kind of look inside and be like, oh no, I decided.
Yeah, it's my choice.
Like, it's not that they didn't pick me. I decided I wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
So it's always you're all holding your cards.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That makes tons of sense.
Tons of sense. So how did you get started? Because you said you're self-taught, and like literally, how did you start, and what did you start with?
Yeah, it's nearly 6 years now, I think, since you set up your studio. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a long time. It's great.
Thank you. I would say officially, I probably started, technically 6 years altogether from when I picked up a canvas and paintbrush.
Wow.
But the arts probably started a lot earlier. So I've always drawn. This is how I remember it. I remember going to Nigeria. So I moved to Nigeria when I was like 7.
Yeah.
From my family, we moved back to Nigeria for the first time when I was 7. And I remember my dad buying the notepads where you paint with a paintbrush. So he did one of those, and he bought for all me and my siblings, and I just remember drawing. So we just drew, and I was good at drawing, and I always drew. And when I was like it just kind of kept on going on. When I was in like primary school, I think like maybe primary 3, I remember like doing little drawings, but like, because at the time I thought I was going to join the Air Force, so I would like draw myself into some of the old military leaders of Nigeria, into like the money kind of like a note has done.
Oh really? I love that.
I used to do little things like that. And then what else? And this is where it gets very weird, because it's almost like I was always meant to be an artist, because from then on now, I remember in like maybe primary 4, primary 5 back there, because we never had art in my school.
No.
Hence why I didn't even do art in primary school particularly. We had a art club as opposed to art lesson. So people that were part of an art club, they would all occasionally go on museum trips and whatnot. Had no clue of any of that. But this was the first time I ever went to a museum. And I remember I was, maybe give or take, I may have been like 9 or 10. And I remember just being in the school, and the guy that's in charge of the art club running up to me and giving me a consent form, like, oh yeah, you can draw, take this home. And I just remember thinking, how does he know I can draw? Like the whole time, like even now it's weird when I say this, because I remember thinking, how does he know I can draw? He's not seen my drawings.
He's not seen your drawing, but he just came to you.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, he came to me and said I can draw. Like he knew I could draw. It's weird, but
that is weird.
I took it home. My mom signed it, and
So this is in a museum in Nigeria.
That's the first time I saw. Huh?
This is in a museum in Nigeria.
Yeah. So that was the very first time I ever saw an abstract painting. This was in Nigeria. I can't even remember the name of it, but and then it settled in my head, because that was the first time that I kind of sort of art with its power, because the idea of explaining red means this, but it's not actually there. And I think that's kind of when my entry into like appreciating art beyond sight, because prior to that I just drew. And the funny thing is, because a lot of people drew, I was just somebody that could draw, and then a lot of people that I could just draw. Like there were people that could draw like me, there were people that could draw less, there were people that could even draw better. But there were people that could draw. That's all it was. It's a country where I guess there's so much creativity, and it's like things like that is so natural. Like, not saying everybody, but there was a significant number enough to not make it a big deal. Like it's just something I did, and then so I'll fast forward a few more arts, like just trying to make the art journey how it happened.
Yeah.
Probably in secondary school now. So that's probably the more highlights. The rest of primary school kept on drawing. Secondary school, early secondary school, I had stopped. At this point, I was the best student I could be. Put it that way. I was the best I could be.
Yeah.
Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times in class, I remember not really copying my notes, but like on the back of my book, if you pick any of my secondary school notepads, there's either some sort of poetry, some sort of drawing, so I was doing all of this. So if you open my locker, there was magazines with little drawings here and there, and I was drawing shoes and there was just drawings everywhere. It was almost like a grip. Like I would spend more time, like my notepads, if you open them from behind and go to the front, you find there's more stuff almost all the way to the front than there was anything in front where I meant to actually copy
doing your notes.
I was drawing. It makes sense. I was playing about. I was drawing.
And at that time, out of interest, did you draw things and show people, or was it a very personal thing that you sketched in your book and you kind of kept it to
I would draw
yourself?
things and show. As a secondary school, I stopped drawing to show. It was like I drew and people saw.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So from primary school, I still got excited and showed people what I was drawing. Yeah. But after primary school, and by the time I was like 11, 12, it's like I could draw. Everyone knew I could draw. It wasn't such a big deal. Even at home, I guess I always had these two things that kind of leveled me out. At home, a lot of my siblings were always of the, look, we know someone that could do better or just as good.
Yeah.
And outside, there was the group of people that were blowing hot air on some, oh, you're the best thing I've seen. So it kind of kept a balance of not listening to either parts. Yeah. And kind of just, again, maybe that's where they're just doing what I want came from, because I just do. You know,
you had almost two different voices.
Yeah, nobody could tell me it was bad. Nobody could actually tell me it was good. It was just,
you just did your
so
thing.
at that point, I would say a few of my friends would have me draw on their lockers as well. Because I was drawing on my lockers. But I wasn't necessarily showing people. It was just something that everybody knew. Like, occasionally I want to, like, because the teachers used to all, like, check our lockers to make sure our lockers are neat. Yeah. So sometimes I might be cheeky and, like, draw something or write something that I shouldn't really write on the locker and, like, paint it in a certain way that when she opens it, she's like, how dare you? And, like, it was, like, just little using graffiti in, like, I was a child, so I guess doing what children do when you have a skill. So I was playing about with that. Nothing offensive, by the way. Just like drawing.
Did you get into trouble when you did that in school, or no? Did they kind of let that happen and nurture that?
I wouldn't say I necessarily got in trouble for doing that. I would say I got in trouble for what I was meant to be doing.
Yes.
So, I was meant to be doing other stuff, like writing my notes, or maybe doing my assignments, or maybe said I was drawing it. Like, so it was more that nobody was necessarily against it, but it's like you should be doing something else.
Yeah.
So, this was pretty much most of my early, like 13, 14, 15, and at that point, I'd moved away. I started doing little designs and clothes. And so for me, now looking back, I guess I was always an artist, because there was never a time there wasn't any kind of art present, because through this time there was dancing. I would consider myself a dancer. All this time of creating and drawing, I never considered any of those things art. I was like, I'm drawing because I can draw. There's drawing. But I had such a high level of reverence for, like, artists. So I wouldn't even, like, they're so there, like, all the way there. Like, I can't imagine, like, what I'm doing is different from what they're doing. Even if they did exactly what I'm doing, it's different. They're like, different level. I kind of had that idea. Like, it was so far from me. Like, it's not something you could dare imagine to me. Until maybe now university is probably where everything now changed. Because obviously college and all of that, it was saying, I draw, I dance, whatever. And now in university, it got to a time where I got ill, where I couldn't go to lectures. And so I started spending a lot of time at home.
Back in England, or was that still in Nigeria?
Oh, no, back in England. So I moved back when I was like 15. So from like 14, 15, everything was back to the UK. Same kind of way. Like everybody knew not everybody. Like one of my friends, he did arts, like in college, and I've always done science, by the way.
Oh,
like,
really?
So as far as school is concerned, I've never actually done an art class. My primary school didn't have art school. My secondary school was a science school, so there was no arts, whatever. And then when I came back, I did triple science. Then I did, because I did GCSE early, very, very early, so I did a whole year of triple science, which was basically nothing. And then I did electronics engineering.
Oh, wow.
College, and then Yeah, and
I
then I
did
did
not know
aeronautical
that.
engineering at uni.
You kept that quiet.
You kept that so quiet.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah.
On
But it
that,
was while I was at. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say with the on that, just on the primary school, I'd be interested to hear like whether you think now, having gone through like your just that beginning journey, whether art should be more of a thing, especially in Nigeria, and I can say in Kenya as well, because I grew up in Kenya. And art is just well, at least when I was there, was not a subject. Like it's not a thing.
Yeah.
Although, as you discovered very early on, it's such an amazing outlet. And it should be. Should it be
Yeah,
encouraged?
absolutely. I would say this. Unfortunately, I think it's part of a bigger problem because it's not necessarily. I think with African countries in Africa, they're a little further behind Western world in terms of ideologies because we're all operating in the Western world's format. So what happened is there was a time that the Western world didn't have that much respect for art, and there was a time that they did have respect for art, and there is the kind of time that we're in now. And what happens is we're probably in the space where they didn't have respect for art in Africa.
Yeah.
Like, does that make any sense in the timing of where things are going? And the problem with that is it's easy because so many people are good at it. That people stop seeing the value is the reason why I don't necessarily, when people come in like, oh, this is beautiful, 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 I tend to step back and just let them talk because I don't necessarily think my work, I mean, it could be beautiful, but my work necessarily doesn't go to be beautiful. The optics of it being beautiful or not beautiful becomes secondary. Of course it should look nice, but it should give you something more than look nice.
Yes.
And I think the idea is for a lot of them, art is meant to look good. It's a decoration almost, like it's, you know, compared to the power to reduce it to a decoration obviously explains why a parent would go, I'd rather my child go and study this science than go and learn how to decorate.
You said that so eloquently. I completely see it. Yeah. Why decorate when you? Yeah, it's like, why decorate when you can be an engineer?
Yeah, but when you look at it from a deeper perspective, once upon a time in the world, when they said intellectuals, they considered artists among intellectuals. Like Da Vinci was just as much as an artist as he was a scientist, and credited and respected in both fields. So if you're looking at human anatomy, you would see stuff with Da Vinci's drawing of human, like there are things that still credit him in the science field as much as they are in the art field. But at some point in the world, a division was made. And I have my whole theory. It's one of the things I'm kind of writing on right now. I don't know, I must have told you guys the last 2 years about the book I'm writing.
Yes.
I'm still writing it. Yeah, I'm still writing it because I had to do a much longer research than I planned. But essentially, it's one of the things I'm trying to highlight, how when they divide what is art and what's not art, and it takes away the power and it reduces, it's kind of like removes something that altogether can really improve. Even in primary schools and nursery schools, the two things I'm going to point out, they teach pretty much whole of nursery school, almost everything is totally art. Like children, they teach you colors and shapes while painting it. They teach you names of things like the white dog, the blue cat. These things help you remember things. All of this, all up until you finish nursery, and then they drop it. And I don't understand why something that works so well
At
just
the
be
beginning.
abandoned.
Yeah, that's such a good
instead
point.
of incorporated.
It's such a good point.
Because you remember things when you see them in a picture. So, like, rather than
Because
read
it's
100
power in
pages
video.
of a book,
Yeah.
designing your own
absolutely.
drawing of whatever the material is
Yeah.
would help you remember.
And
that
that's
better.
actually something we
Yeah,
think a
that's
lot.
true.
Like as a child, you don't think, oh, I'm an artist, or no, I'm not an artist. You just draw.
Yeah.
You just create.
Yes, exactly.
You just do it naturally.
Exactly, which brings me to my. That's why I personally, because this is the main aim of the book, to kind of break the idea of like there is a specific kind of people that can be art, or there is a kind of art. Like there is like everybody is of the same. I guess the only difference between me and a regular other person drawing is I chose the profession.
Yes.
As far as artists, everybody is. The profession itself takes a little bit more sacrifice, a little bit more dedication, this, that, and the third, which makes it a profession. But it's like, I don't know. Everybody can wash their car, but there are people that specifically wash cars.
Yeah.
Everybody can shower themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's more just specific to doing it.
Yeah.
And like being a dentist or cleaning your teeth, essentially. Like one is just one basic level, which is everybody can do that, and everybody needs to brush their teeth every day. Everybody needs some sort of art in their life.
Yeah.
But then you can be a dentist where you go a little further than just brushing your teeth and know this, and people come up to you and ask you questions to help their dental hygiene. So essentially, the artist is a dentist, and everybody brushing their teeth. Does that make sense? So
that makes such beautiful sense.
It's like everybody has the same skills.
This is the toothbrush segment on the podcast.
I really love that. Wait, go on.
So I was just going to say, so that kind of, we kind of got to university where you studied kind of, engineering you mentioned. What kind of happened after that?
Aeronautical engineering.
So
at that point, it was a case of I was a little ill. I had a lot more time at home, so I started painting and posting on my Instagram. And just regular paint posts. Again, not thinking much of it. It's like an old habit that I picked back up and I'm just doing. Now, at this point, I started noticing a bit of comments here, like, oh, this is really good. Oh, this is good. And it kept on building up. It kept on building up. Still didn't really pay attention to it until it got a bit overwhelming. So it got to a place where it was now not just on Instagram. It's like people that would have seen something on Instagram, when they see me in person, the first thing they want to talk to me about is something I posted on Instagram. You know, my friends arguing with me and actually saying, you need to post more, you should just see how it goes. At the time I wanted to join the Air Force. So my aim was after uni I was going to join the Air Force, but I was part of this thing called cadets, like the Air Training Corps and whatnot. So my commanding officer at the time in cadets used to always forget. So I skipped parts of my story, by the way, but I'll just bring it back because it kind of puts everything in perspective. So I remember telling you from secondary school I moved to UK and I skipped to uni. But before uni, even in college, most of my regular friends that I was with every day, 24/7, kept on forgetting that I did electronic engineering.
Really?
I kept on thinking I did arts. So many times I'll correct. These are people that were with me every day. Every time I correct, they'll forget and always think I did arts.
Yeah.
So it was like an ongoing thing. So much so that even when I was properly going to go for it, but I told some of them that I'm going to do the art, some of them were confused.
Like why? You've always done that.
Kind of, but at this point, my commanding officer was going through the same thing. So he kept on forgetting that I didn't do art in uni. But every now and then he would see something and like, oh, I really like this, like, oh, this. And he one time he asked, like, oh, when you're done with this project, can you give me the painting, kind of like, is there a way I can buy it? So I was like, it's not a project. If you want it, I can give you.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, what do you mean this? But he talked about it loosely and forgot, kind of. And then one day he called me, slightly frustrated, basically asking me, like, he wanted to move or something. He went to a few galleries. He wanted to buy some art, and there's a painting that he saw on my page that's haunting him, like that. You know, he kept on thinking of, which he feels was better than all the ones he saw. So I guess the frustration of these guys are charging stupid amount for nothing, and him wanting a particular painting made him call me and like really go like, what's the deal? How are you? Are you this? What's the, like, basically ask more information.
Yeah.
Which in the conversation basically told him I could get the painting to him, and once again, it's not a school project. It's not for uni. I was just doing it. At which point he then stopped to ask me if I really cared and really wanted to do what I was doing at uni.
Oh, really?
At this point he's like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Maybe you should do art. Maybe. Yeah. So he started kind of like putting that, like, are you sure this is like, because this is really good and blah blah blah, and it seems more your thing. And because the whole time I was in cadets, again, I would do little art projects, like little drawings and little things for our cadets. Again, everywhere I went, I always had a drawing or something, like, just there, and not really paid attention to it. At this point, everyone around me, so I would come out on Saturdays, Sundays to, like, no, actually, this was at uni, so I hadn't even started doing the bigger work. This was still like little drawings on paper. So everybody was like messaging me, with little basic drawings on paper.
Yeah.
At which point I thought, you know what, maybe I should take this seriously. The way there's people too, people that don't know me, somebody like, oh, you look like an artist, like those kind of random conversations. Like,
it's like everything about you was just was pulling you towards being an artist.
Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah.
Like a calling.
So I guess I just kind of listened to the word. I guess I listened to the word and then start focused. I think I bought canvas and bought some water. Was it watercolor? Yeah, I bought watercolor and bought gouache and bought one oil paint. Again, I had no idea how anything was meant to work, so I had no diluters, no white spirits for my oil paint. I kind of put it on the canvas, then realized it didn't sit in well, and then did what? Like basically, I just kind of, and is why even to this day I painted out holes in my canvas. I kind of just, so everything in a way, how I got here still sticks with, is why I kept, like, I don't, if you look at this, that's literally the canvas itself. It's not meant, sorry, it's meant to be like a, for the coat before. I drew it, but I tend to do it from the other way out, because of those reasons.
Do you think,
but yeah, that's where it all started from then on.
Do you think that...
From then on, I paid more attention, and after that, it was basic steps. Basic steps.
Would it have made a difference if you did go to art school or study it more? Like, do you think you would be doing what you're doing now as good as you're doing it if you'd gone down that route? Or is not doing it giving you more freedom and more kind of opportunities to explore your own creative side, I guess?
If you asked me this question years ago, I would probably be like, no. Like, I would have a definitive answer. But the thing is, it's interesting because this used to be a very huge insecurity of mine. I used to be like, oh, I don't, and so much so because there was no access to anyone doing art anywhere around me. I would attach myself to even friends that did art. Like, you know, they just went to uni and did art. But I would attach myself almost like this was an institution that was backing me to kind of my only source of any artistic knowledge.
Yes.
I didn't have no, I mean, when I say I had no clue, I mean, in 2016 was when I associated Picasso, the artist, to Cubism, the paint.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I knew the name Picasso, couldn't tell you how it looked. Cubism, for me, was art. Never knew it was someone's particular style. And this is what 2016 is, that's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So a year even after creating art and selling art, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
In terms of the way I appreciated art, it never was, oh, this person was this person and created this for. It was simply purely on, I go there, if it strikes something in me, I question myself, why did this make me feel this way? If I thought something about that, why do I feel this about this? So it's almost like an internal question asking. That's how I appreciate. So I never got into the knowledge of art until 2016 when I did a lot of self-study and all of that. Now, would it have made a difference in terms of the knowledge and confidence? Maybe yes. If I went to school, I would have had the knowledge and confidence and all of that, which would have maybe made me start off earlier, maybe put me in a better position right now with what I have. But the other side is because art has another lane for self-taught artists that already exist, who arguably are probably more successful than the ones that have gone to school over time. There was never that pressure to go ahead and go back to uni and try and do another course in art. 1, 2, art can't particularly be taught. And because of the way I kind of came into it, I kind of formed, my style came in quite early. So if you never knew me, and I always made that a point, like if you never knew me or never knew anything I did, if you saw 3 or 4 or 5 of my paintings, you can say, oh, the artist that did this painting is the one that did this painting.
Your style was coming, And
that's more important to me than even knowing my name or knowing this is my style. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because even if it's just purely on, oh, this artist that does this, I like this artist that does this. Like, you don't know who the artist is. That way you can still govern real life. And I wanted it to be more subtle. So I wouldn't even, like, be in your face like, oh, this is me, this is Matt. So all of that, I personally believe, those kind of ways of creating came from not being in art school. So the digital painting of doing this, that's not art school. Also having multiple avenues to create. If I was in art school, it may have not been like that. And they may have stopped me in my oil paintings and be like, oh, you're good at this. Get better at this.
Be specific at this.
They may have stopped me in sculpting and be like, oh, find ways to manipulate this. But
Yeah.
Also, it would have probably channeled my mind like to fit in the setting. So overall, I would say, I don't regret not going. I wouldn't have gone. I don't think I was meant to go because that's my personality.
Yeah, that was your journey.
Because when you even look at things like creating what I want, you can't take it and go. I have there's no rules to it. When I'm painting a person, I can start painting from a finger. I can start painting from the ear. I don't necessarily do the cross. I only saw that when I was older because remember, I didn't even do art in school. So I didn't even know that there were people learning to draw like this till I was about 15.
So yeah, it kind of
sounds... So I had no clue the official way.
It kind of sounds like the only thing that might have been different is almost the confidence piece from being at art school. It's kind of, but I think you get that over time anyway. Sorry?
And more support.
Yeah.
So when you graduate, you're usually put on a platform and put in these different places.
Be some opportunities.
So that's a really good point. And just in terms of how, how it seems like you being able to do the different things is such a big part of what fuels you. So you started from oil painting, then went to digital. Where did the murals and sculptures come in?
So oil painting was the thing I was doing, and then digital was like an attempt to do sketches for the oil painting. Didn't really go. The sculptures came in one day. Actually, you know what's interesting?
Yeah.
We were already neighbors when I started sculpting. So as of when you first moved in, you noticed I had no sculptures.
No.
Yeah, I remember seeing one sitting on a wooden stool one day when I came in.
Yeah. So as of then, it was already a thing. So as of 2018, I believe it was 2018 before June, because I think it was April maybe.
Yeah.
2018 April. This is like 3 years of like painting and doing the digital arts now. And doing another thing called recycling art. So the recycling art is essentially like oil painting or just painting really, but with spray paints. And I specifically were looking for like, I guess, rubbish or wood or metal or things not necessarily considered useful anymore.
Yeah.
And taking it and painting on it to kind of create some sort of art to recycle it, give it a new life form.
Yeah.
And the aim was to kind of, new collaboration with the charity.
Yeah.
For example, let them use their their mailing list, all of them can bid or whatever, do an auction.
Yeah.
The money goes completely to charity. The paintings go to the people who end up, getting it because they were going to donate anyway.
Yeah.
Now they just get something back. And I thought I could do something that's easy to repeat. So I started doing that. And while I was doing that, I got in love with more of like the outside physical, like kind of away from, because canvases at the time I was doing was still the flat ones. I hadn't even started really using the deep edge canvases.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to sculpt. I figured I was good at it in my head because everything I wanted to do, I thought, I'm probably good at this.
I could do this.
Because even the difference between my drawing and my painting was basically drawing with paint.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. I essentially drew with paint and then it built from
Filled
there.
it in.
So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just sculpt. And I bought some, interesting enough, I'm going to show you guys something interesting.
Yeah, sure.
It's good that we said this. I bought this clay. So this is maybe 3 years old now.
Yeah.
It's not even been opened. But basically, this is the exact clay thing I bought.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, you've seen it.
Yeah.
That's the exact clay tub I bought to actually sculpt. What happened was I was going to play around and get the idea of it with the newspapers and tape. And once I got an idea of what I was going to do, I was going to go ahead and sculpt. Never made it to sculpture because it's a bit like the digital painting. It never made it to canvas because it became a thing of its own and it got good and I just mastered it. And so essentially, now I have a tub of clay that I've had for maybe
3 years and you've never opened it.
Heavy
exactly.
as well.
Never opened it because what I was meant to do was sculpt and
now you're doing it.
The beauty as well with the sculptures is because they talk for themselves. Like using newspaper allows the words written on the newspaper to kind of create themselves.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might sculpt and by the time you read what shows, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Other times it's the idea that you can get something that's flat like this on paper, and before you know, you got a whole human structure on paper and tape. And also how much emotions it brings out of people. You can find people find it extremely funny. Some people are even sad with how broken they look.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to remind people that you feel bad for paper.
Yeah.
Like it's,
You
it
know,
doesn't have feelings. Like
I see the sculptures is when I remember. I think there was a workshop going on in Peckham Levels, and I could see, and I
Yeah.
just saw. I think you were doing heads or something, and I just saw a
yeah.
line of heads, and that you're right. It really brought out a strong emotion in me because it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what are they? Then it's
Yeah.
like, and yeah, it was a very. I didn't think it was funny. It was just quite striking because I'd never seen anything like it. Um,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah. It's
impactful.
funny because because that year, so even interestingly enough, just to add this because I need to give credit to the kids, even though I don't know their names. But
Yeah.
that particular year, I think maybe that was probably, when that happened, that was probably like maybe 2 weeks or
Yeah.
3 weeks into doing that.
Oh wow.
wow.
Like into the very first one, and because I think that was like maybe May, no, that was closer to May. So like
May,
May
yeah,
or
it was
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
yeah. So exactly a month after, that's when I was in Tate, and I did some with some children like in there with Nicholas, and we're doing like the pen people's thing with Tate.
Yeah.
And what I realized is the children that came in there, where some of them were struggling or like didn't have enough energy to kind of create a whole head.
Yeah.
So they were asking me, can I create this? Can I create that? And I must have told them, go ahead. So some of them created like little swords. Some of them created like flowers, other stuff. And while they were doing that, it kind of empowered me to then remember like, oh, hold up, why am I just doing heads? If they can do this, I can do anything.
Yeah.
And that day, that's when I came back home, and then I created a whole leg and halfway human structure, which was the half and half one that was in the exhibition at Peckham Level.
Yeah.
And then after that one was when we had the full-blown human structure. So credit to those kids who inspired me after I inspired them. But the point is, it's weird how that works, because all of a sudden, what was just heads, and even though it came to me and I still limited myself without really giving it thought until I saw
Until
these
you
children
see
going
other
crazy
people.
with it.
Yeah. That's
Exactly.
the beauty with creating, isn't it? It's
With
like,
other people as
yeah,
well.
with other people. You make something, they make something, it inspires you to make more. It's
Exactly.
almost, it's like self-growing.
Yeah, like everybody starts with the same
it feeds
thing.
itself.
It
It's
feeds
back and forth.
itself. Yeah, exactly.
Rewind to the start, before I got into Peckham Level, why I was even in that conversation
Yeah.
was, as of when I started, when I accepted the role as an artist, and this is what I'm going to do, I started doing a lot of little things. And one of those little things was, every Sunday I would get like one of those recycling, quote unquote, rubbish, go to the back of the building and just spray paint. And what happened was, a lot of the children used to get excited seeing that, and they would just come sit down around. Every now and then, can I have a go? And I would like let them spray here and there.
That's so
as of when
fun.
Peckham Level started, they were the first to get excited, per se. They were the ones that was telling their parents, like, look, he's, that's the artist. So I started in workshops with them,
Nice.
from different workshops with children and community stuff. So it would just basically be like, you guys want to paint the garden? Right, cool. I'll get some stuff. I'll get some paint. You come out, monitor it, make sure it's fine. We've got a garden. What's the next project you want to do? You want to do this?
Yeah.
And we just kind of work with the TRAs and.
People must
try and
absolutely
make
love that. Like, I need to come to this Insanity Day. It just sounds so much fun.
No, absolutely. The next one I do, I will try and make it, because I've kept it just within the area.
Yeah.
But what would be great is if we can have like a full day where we can get to the park and even do some like
Come to our
big
studio
murals,
as well.
and that would be amazing. Yeah,
That would be so good.
What I might do now is do a little summary, because I'm aware we've just gone off like a rocket, and this is really good, like, because we've kind of gone through the whole journey. But to kind of summarize, because we didn't quite do it at the start, like, for the people that are listening, so kind of Sani, as he pitches himself, is a contemporary visual artist and basically an all-round creative. And he does lots of painting, digital illustration, and sculpting, particularly with paper and newspaper. And I guess
that's me.
we met him in Peckham Levels when we had a studio there. And what we've kind of done up to now is just kind of chart the journey. So we're kind of at the stage now where you obviously did lots of making and drawing and painting when you were younger, and then you kind of took the plunge about 6 odd years ago to kind of go a bit more full time and make a livelihood out of it, basically. So we kind of have loads of questions as well, and we've gone through a bunch of them through the conversation so far.
Let's go.
Yeah, so now we might just do some quick fire questions and see what happens.
And see what actually. God, we it's amazing talking to you. Like, you've kind of just taken us through this amazing whirlwind.
I do talk a lot, if you remember. I talk a lot.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And you just sparked so many different kind of ideas and questions in my head.
That's good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great.
The kind of two things actually that would be good to hear your perspective. Like, now, how have you found this crazy time that we're in? How, like, with Black Lives Matter, with everything that's going, with the lockdown, you know, how have you found it? What are your thoughts on that, and how it's like impacting your art, if it is? It's a big question.
So, I'll start with the easier one to kind of handle, and then like the other one, which would be, the first one would be quarantine and lockdown.
Yeah.
So the quarantine and lockdown, quite obviously, the studio is locked, and other reasons make it hard to go. I mean, you really create art in the same way I would normally create art, especially because a lot of my creation deals with me being happy, me being in the right mood, because I'm not consciously doing it. I need to be in the right state of mind to be able to just flow and go ahead and do that. And an artist's nature is to adapt to the time and kind of like reflect what exactly is going on. So I'm not meant to be in the best state of mind when the world is not in the best state of mind. I'm not meant to have happy brains when it's not. You know, everything kind of has to coincide hand in hand, not necessarily intentionally, more so everything is just interlocked, and that's why it happens that way. So how I personally treated the quarantine and whatever, there's been less painting going on, there's been a certain level of paperwork and business happening, there's been a lot of reflecting in terms of planning on where to go forward, and ultimately there's been cool little ways to, because everything always pushes a new style of art. For example, I've started doing online, or should I say, story exhibitions. I've done 3 of them. So one was a video art story exhibition where it was different video arts to my story, and I posted, and it was like Monday or Tuesday. I also did one where it was like digital art. I did one where it was just sculptures. I did one where the theme was black and gold. And I could go on for forever. I mean, that's the beauty of being a curator yourself. You can just like pick this group of paintings and make them into a whole thing. Create a story and all of that.
Amazing.
So that part's happened. Everybody being at home, because I'm aware that normally, as you guys know, I'm always in the studio.
Yeah, you're always
go anywhere.
At all times of day.
Exactly.
At night.
So it's not. It's at night too. So it's not like I'm particularly like, oh, I wish everything was open so I can go out. I wouldn't be going out if everything was open. But there is a sense of like everybody being out and creating a certain level of vibration that allows me to be in creating. It's like everybody's out, so I'm here and observing everybody creating. When everybody's in with me, it's like now I feel like my space is intruded. Like I can't, it's not. I'm not observing people outside anymore. We're all together now indoors.
Yeah, I know. You're not getting the same energy and kind of inspiration. Yeah, I see that.
But pretty much that's all I would say for the corona pandemic. I mean, there is the other things that every human being gets to experience where you question what parts are exactly how you're being told. There are parts where you don't, in the sense of like, there are parts where you dismiss conspiracy theories because they didn't make sense and they're talking rubbish. There are parts where you're like, that makes sense. Let me go research a little bit. So like everything in the world, that part is just there. And my nature anyway is information. So I love knowledge. I love information. So usually it's not the worst thing. I can always go research, even though I end up realizing I wasted my time.
Yeah.
Now,
I know exactly what you mean. 6 hours later, you're like, oh, okay, actually, no, that doesn't make sense.
Now, to the second issue, or maybe probably the bigger one that's kind of right now holding the world in standby, it would be the killing of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement and how it's affecting everyone. So the other issue is from a bigger perspective. I'm going to break it down into 2. From from an artist Sani perspective, and as a black person before I was ever an artist, living in the world, understanding this is a reality, and basically having to deal with this way before this particular year and how it's happened. So without overflogging, every black person remembers the first time they realized that they are different from another person based on the reality of the world. You're probably around very, very young, maybe like 6, 7, 5, depends on where you live. You realize there's difference. Not necessarily negative or whatever, but you realize there is a difference. Either your parents or somebody will tell you there is a difference. I personally, I'm not white, so I wouldn't know, but I believe in contrast to the average white person, it takes them maybe till about their childhood or even not higher in their teenagers, so maybe like 11, to kind of really like early secondary school. As a secondary school is when, I guess, if you're not necessarily black, you realize there's a different treatment based on the ward, not necessarily anybody's upbringing. For little things like, you know, when you go into shops, you know, the one that will follow you around, or when you have to, when you and 7 of your friends are together, as of year 7, there's a chance that police will pull up and break you guys apart or wonder what you guys are doing, because that's when my younger brother kind of realized that he was, for example. So having said that, there is a part of like me that kind of like essentially is looking at it as it takes other people a different timing to realize some of the struggles that people go through. But in this particular situation, it existed for so long that I almost don't believe that anybody that acts as though they just found out has a legitimate point. Anybody can act as to what extent they found out more because they did more research than they just surface level. But acting like you know more, sorry, you just found out this, it's not believable. So now I have to look at it from the condition of the world. Artistically, I made it a goal of mine to not necessarily depict us in the sense of struggle, except is from a point of like anger. And when I say us, I'm referring to black people. I've got very few paintings that directly talk about Black Lives Matter, and more so I have more paintings that talk about racism or the bigger picture, or how humans live. And I'll talk about the only painting I have particularly about Black Lives that is quite direct. It's like a painting of a guy with dreadlocks and holding a sign called Black Lives Matter with little kind of child wearing the KKK clothing. And that particular painting was taken from a picture from I can't remember the exact year, but I believe it's 90 something basically. And it's actually a real picture like I painted from, like a policeman holding his basically putting a black policeman basically and a KKK baby touching his pulse. And what I flipped it around, because this particular thing was a conversation that I had with somebody in 2016 about police brutality. And the conversation goes like this, to make it quite simple. America needs to know, obviously me criticizing America about killing, and somebody popping in telling me, oh, you're British, our police don't carry guns, this, what do you know about what you're saying? And for the purpose of understanding, I didn't go, oh yeah, well, British did this, British did that, British did this. That person has a point. So what I did is, art ultimately doesn't have a race and speaks through everything. So what I did was try and create a story from the police officer's perspective of someone who I know, because there is a group of people, and that's why I'm not so excited over some people's movement. There is a particular group of people that the only reason why they didn't say anything before, or the main reason why they didn't say anything before in terms of like what they were seeing in the news or whatever, was for the simple reality that inherently they believe that surely, not because they've seen anything, but surely this guy could have done something. Surely these police officers are not that bad. And when I get to a point of that level of debate with somebody, I couldn't really do anything. I couldn't go any further. Because you're not dealing with facts. You're not dealing with what you see. You're dealing with your inherent belief of what you want to happen. So now you're telling me, no, surely, but do we see the whole video? But do we know, you know, all these other extra excuses? So essentially, I know I'm talking long, but I'll try and, there's a very deep topic.
It's a big topic, yeah.
So I would say what happened was I ended up trying to create a story of a police officer who believed in the system, who was a police officer that is black. And in the modern day time now, after retiring from officer, now being a lot older, had his child killed by police on threat. And the white child wearing KKK uniform represents a certain level of ignorance that had existed in that ward from before, I using the child's ignorance, the child doesn't know, and then KKK representing the hate goes hand in hand with the ignorance to kind of form that same hate level, affecting even the people that play that play police role and thought they were there making the difference, or believe that surely thing. So I use that to kind of describe that particular painting. Was the last one I did because it kind of was like my way of directly addressing the issue and not moving on to other stuff, but not having to talk about that in that specific way after that, because it's almost like this is what it is. Yeah. And if after this you have a surely, there is nothing else to say. There is nothing else to say. You're going to take your time.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
But that particular time, that was 2016, that came with certain movements and certain beliefs that I had changed. So I didn't just realize this, get angry, because way before 2016, they were killing. If you were ever a child and you listen to hip-hop, you would have heard of people like Sean Bell.
Yeah.
I was in Nigeria, not in London. I was in Nigeria, and I was listening to hip-hop like I do. And I heard Sean Bell, and I went on Google. At the time, there was no Google. I believe it was Encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah. And I went to go search. I'm showing my age, aren't I? I went to go search it, and basically, I remember finding out he was a guy that killed by police, and other American, the one that riots in LA, and you everybody was excited for NWA not long ago. Oh yeah, straight out of Compton, the movie. Everybody forgets that even in the movie, this was a centerpiece of that particular conversation. Yeah. So from my perspective, I've kind of always looked at it like the problem has always been there. Everybody knows the problem, and not everybody's particularly willing to change. And some people, it's more convenient for them to claim they don't know.
Yes.
So as a black person, I got to a place where I personally, is the reason why I didn't necessarily go and protest, not because I don't believe a protest isn't good, but I told myself I'm never going to stand in a place where I'm begging somebody to understand my reality. I'm not going to get into a place where I'm trying to convince somebody who's intentionally ignorant. That's the difference. Because before I didn't know it was intentional ignorance. Yeah. Now I know it's intentional ignorance based on how much is there. It's like I can show you 5 different things and you go, surely that's not, you don't know, that's intentional ignorance.
Yeah,
and without necessarily putting any diss at anybody, understanding that if you grew up in this ward, period, black, white, or however, or otherwise, it took me till 21 to actually get a real knowledge of black culture.
Yes.
Not because I wasn't educated or I didn't read. In fact, if you're educated and you read and you know everything exactly, if as a black person it took me 21, it could take a white person even longer to even know little stuff like history of the Benin Kingdom, or the name Africa, where it comes from, or even religious context, even the great people, or even King Medusa, as everybody knows it has this whatever, was a Moroccan queen that was penalized to kind of had dreadlocks, was changed to snakes in the story. Like these things are kind of sprinkled around in the context that all you need to do is hold up and try and chase some of these stories down the line. You know, then you start realizing, that don't add up. Yeah. And so as because I know it actually takes effort, I think it's normal to grow. If you grew up in this world, there's no way you grew up in this world, black, white, or otherwise, that you don't grow with a bias towards black people. Yeah. Period. As a black person, you grow with a bias towards black people based on the world. It's an active thing to undo that. Yeah. And if you don't undo it, there's no possible way that you can see it the same way I see it. And that's for everybody. So when someone is actively arguing that surely, based on what they know, then we don't go any further.
You can't go any further. It's almost like, as they say, people need to do the work themselves and follow that story all the way through and understand where everything is rooted from, which takes time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyway, I'll fast forward a bit. My personal journey from then on was now I was going to do things in my everyday life. Yeah. To actively fight things and actively put us in a better light and actively speak about certain things. So, for example, a lot of my art, the intentional reason why I specifically use black people as a subject matter of art pieces is because one, every piece that I've come across in art, you can relate. Art doesn't have a race sometimes.
No.
So it's a human story. So because it's a human story, and I could relate to any Da Vinci or even Picasso painting that's not even a picture of human beings,
Yeah.
it should be all right to show a certain depiction of a certain kind of people for anybody else in any other race to be able to relate to that particular story. Because I'm talking to human stories, just the representation is from a black person, so as such, it will be a black imagery. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know exactly.
Stuff like that.
I think that's I've never thought of it like that. But I'm really understanding it. It's like, yeah, I can look at a painting of a man doing something and relate, even though like a white man doing something, and I can relate even though I'm a black.
You don't think of the race.
You don't think of the race. You don't think even necessarily of the gender. You see the human. Yeah, it's like on a human level, a humanity level. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and so I try and do a lot of that, and the other thing I do where it's like the traditional and cultural thing, the specific reason why I paint them in those attire is to give an opportunity where somebody just came to see art, but now I give you information about this particular culture, and maybe because of my nature is trouble making a bit. I wouldn't just give you the story, these are Benin Kingdom people or people of the Benin Kingdom. I'll tell you this is the Benin Kingdom that we the British went to go rob. If that makes sense. So when I'm telling you the story, there's information about how we got here. And in your little bias, you might not pay attention to this, but if I do a lot of these, after a while, there is a different level of appreciation if you've been taught something and now you're seeing something else.
Yeah.
And that's in the practicality of my everyday life.
Yeah.
Now, how I react to other people in this particular topic, how I feel is a bit like it was about time. If not now, it was going to be another time. People were going to get angry. A lot of people have issues with the looting and the statue things. I don't believe in. Not I don't believe. I wouldn't particularly go and knock at anybody's door and say, like, take me seriously. So I don't even agree with peaceful protests. Not even anywhere in my space. Alone normal protests, if that makes sense, because that's what people started doing. The opposite of peaceful protests is not violent protests. It's protests, you know what I'm saying, unrest, anger. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Even when people are screaming violent or damage of property is not considered violence of the law.
No.
If that makes sense. If you loot, if you go and rob something from a house and nobody is there, you're considered to be stealing, not robbing.
Not violent,
Armed robbery is a bigger charge than stealing. You can't be violent to a wall. You can't be violent to a window. So even in the narrative, you're starting to see how people are putting it in certain ways. Then the next thing you hear is people are questioning how peaceful the protest is, almost as though that gives it validation. But the reality is, a protest just says one thing. We disagree with what the system is. There's no law or contract that anybody went to go sign and said that in this protest we're going to be peaceful too. That's the least of their problem.
That's true.
In a protest, the last thing anyone in a protest is thinking is, let me not inconvenience you. Because if they don't inconvenience you, it's very easy to ignore. That's not even a protest at that point. If I was going to stand in front of your house because I disagree with something, don't say anything, holding a sign up, you can ignore the whole thing without even paying any attention to it.
That's so true.
So essentially, even when I'm talking to or when I'm seeing what's going on in the world, a part of me, it doesn't affect me the same way it affects everybody. I'll be honest, because I've got into this space before. I've passed the space, I've come up with my own thing. Now, it doesn't change the fact that I can look in and criticize and still say well done to different parts of things, because there is a significant input from everybody. I mean, there's definitely more white people jumping in and standing up, which I posted something the other day, which is also very good, and which is also could be detrimental, depends on how it works. It's very good because to a certain level, black people have gone through a certain way in life, that even when we make demands, our demands come with the reality of how we've been treated. I'll give an example. If you're never used to being given no sort of drink whatsoever, like you're always thirsty, if I come in here and ask you, what do you want? You're probably going to tell me water. If that makes sense, that would probably be what you will ask for. Now, if you're somebody that's had access to all kinds of drinks, whatever, if I said, give me a drink that you want, whatever, name a drink, you're probably gonna give me some next 1760 something wine,
Yeah.
whatever,
Cocktail,
because you can, you know what I'm saying, you may ask for champagne, you might, all of that is luxury. You can, your head will go to that.
Yeah.
So in the demand for a certain level of justice, you kind of need people that have the audacity to demand.
Yeah.
And that audacity has been given to them over years of being able to demand.
Yeah.
What people don't understand is, in a way, the same way white privilege works for, I guess, somebody that sees somebody and feels uncomfortable to pick up the phone and then call and say, oh, there's a black man doing this.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of privilege and audacity that you would have to feel the need that somebody needs to explain to you.
Yeah.
Now, that's not wrong. We just need you to have that same audacity, keep the audacity, and now direct it to the government.
To this direction.
Because however we want and we say it and we like it, there is a part inherent that would never let us to naturally grow to that level of demand. Like we couldn't necessarily. Does that make any sense? It's the same way some of us sometimes feel like.
Yeah, it's like
white people can
you
never
always
get to
check
the level
yourself.
of understanding of the struggle. It's almost like based on where we are now, we have a certain level of struggle that we understand, that we can tell people that you can never get to this understanding. It's the same way on the flip side, there's a level of audacity, request, and going hard, and achieving, and getting what you want.
And getting what you want,
when you ask for things.
Yeah.
That we need, and that side that can walk, because if it's just us, we'll never really get to that. We still ask for things with please and say thank you, even when it's our rights.
Yes.
Because they told us it's not.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, that's so. It's so true, and it feels. I think it does feel this time that people are becoming a bit more audacious and becoming a bit bolder. But then you're right. You need the other side. You need white people to support that, to really drive it home, because on our own we won't demand enough.
Yeah, because we wouldn't. We just couldn't possibly.
Yeah.
And also, I think even from my perspective of the way I see it, I think everybody, maybe this is how we should look at it. From an artistic, this again, we're talking about art, so it's always interesting to bring this up and whatever. The truth about race and color specifically, like white, black, all of this, it was always intentional from the start. Whiteness was created as an ideology, and then a group of people were attached to whiteness. Same way blackness was created, and a group of people was attached to blackness, right? We can start from the basic of understanding color, that white and black are not colors, they're concepts of light. So any color brightened will end up white, and any color darkened will end up black. Then we can now go into the second layer, the fact that human beings are all brown and beige. So if you lighten a brown, it will get to the same color as, I guess, a white person, and you darken that same color, the exact same color, not a different grade of color, will get to the darkest human being that you want to get to. Essentially the same color with different lighting.
Yeah.
Now, when you now break it out from that, then you now look at the colors itself. So it would be easy if they came up to human beings and said, look, John, this white person is an animal, this black person is an animal, you hate them, blah, 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 don't like them. If you wanted to undo that, all you need to go to do is, John, look at this black person. Does he look like an animal? Does this? And it's easier to undo that. But the reality is, they first started by creating the colors, or white and black, then creating all the negative stereotype, attaching them to the black, and the positive one, like pure is white, bad is black. You know, all that's that. Once they master this ideology, then it takes us to the next step of, I guess, in America, for example, the power of art is so, like, okay, let's put it this way: caricature. Without caricature, there's probably almost no propaganda in the world.
Yes.
Without the level of caricature put into some of these things, and it's happened everywhere. Think of it in World War II, before Nazi and German did anything, the first thing they start off is, in the newspapers, they start drawing these people in weird shapes with longer nose than they need to, in inhuman kind of formats, to get the brain to adjust to not looking at these people as who they're looking at.
Yeah,
So
not to
like
look at them as
America,
human beings. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can accept, because of how art works in the mind, you can accept looking at the caricature of a black person with extra long bum and extra wide lips with red and not really think of it almost like in cartoon form, because when you watch cartoon, you don't think this is meant to make sense. You don't think, oh, this guy's leg is too long, or this, like cartoon it goes into that part of your consciousness that deals with your dreamy side of like your imagination and your dreams. It doesn't deal with what your logical brain sees and takes in.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does.
So the idea is once you're able to create these caricatures and attach all of these things to this, and then now attach these people to these, and then attach the colors to the people. What happens is an average person can sit down here and have all these bias based on this caricature associated with you. But not directly look at you and say you have extra long lips, you have extra long ass, you look this way, you look that way. Based on they can't see it. But have the exact same feeling as though you did based on the caricature, because this doesn't address looks or logic, it addresses feelings and emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially, I'm saying the power of art has been put into the world to create it's been used in that sense,
It has
in a negative way, to kind of create an image and put, and it's so deep down engraved in things that it's not as simple as coming out and saying, oh, this is this and this is that.
No.
And that's why it's a lot harder to undo, because it's from an emotional, mental. I mean, I always say it this way, like, music, for example, another form of art that's used a lot, and even fine art, those are one of the few things that don't need permission to go into your brain and actually occupy residency.
Yeah,
go on, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, like, in terms of like, using art to then make it better, you know, how you were saying about, you know, before art has almost fed these prejudices and these ideas subconsciously. It sounds like we can then use it to reverse that and start showing more positive, much more togetherness to try and heal this and move it forward.
Also, I'll show you another layer of like the power of art. For example, I speak English and other languages like Hausa. I'm not so great at it, but those are two languages I speak. Someone can be in China, speaks Chinese and maybe Mandarin or another language. No word of English or Hausa. We have no communication basically. My way of communicating to him in terms of art can be way quicker than going to learn any language for the simple reality that if I drew fire on a piece of paper and I showed him that piece of paper of fire, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He knows that this is hot. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I can take that piece of paper everywhere around the world, regardless what language they speak. All I need to do is this, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. It shows you how instant and how quicker this communication works. Versus even if I learned his language, trying to tell him fire, I could mispronounce it. If I could pronounce it exactly, Like, for example, if somebody said, oh, those shoes are fire, you now have to question what kind of fire are you talking about? Fire hasn't look good or fire. But there's no mistake if I was referring to it through art.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
And that's the kind of things I'm like, those kind of little powers that art has itself needs to be explored, but needs to be understood. Like, everybody needs to already go, oh yeah, this is art, it does this for me, before it can have any sort of power over changing the mind of anybody or anything like that.
Movement.
But that's only using art. I personally am not one of those people that believe art can save the world. I know a lot of people and artists love to do that and be like, oh yeah, art can save the world. I personally believe that art is a reflection of the world. It can tell you where the world is, and whatever situation the world is, it can make it better. It can't save the world.
Oh, I love that.
If you're in a bad situation, it can make you feel better.
I love that.
Okay, so we've a couple more minutes left.
Yeah.
What I might do is just for people that are listening. This is already good, thank you. And I'm consciously being quiet and listening and learning from everything.
I enjoyed it so far.
Thank you. The two, just for people who might want to kind of do what you've done and kind of make their livelihood from making and creating, what tips would you have? Say your top 3 tips to kind of that they could consider.
Yeah, this is gonna sound sad because the reality is there was actually nothing when I started. Advice I would give people is, first off, they need to be like, in terms of what they want to do, is like, if you want to make a like livelihood, form of creativity. You need to do it based on research and deciding if you really want to do it. So I know you've decided, like after deciding this is what you want to do, you need to research and decide. And when I say research and decide, I mean research the reality, the fact that, look, my work, like what kind of work the person does, what kind of work sells, what kind of work people buy, what kind of work people don't buy, what, like how you personally, and there's no generic way because it's a unique, you particularly, how you personally fit into the art world and who your audience is. That's that kind of research that I mean by research and decide. So deciding is an active action of, okay, I'm going to go towards this people, I'm going to go towards that people, and like, you know, deciding who you're particularly going to, like, which audience you're going to feed into.
Yeah.
I think that's important because you could then find yourself in like a little loop of doing the same and not really going anywhere, or doing the same and finding yourself, like some people do things and they want to naturally progress into bigger spaces, but they never left the circle that they're in.
Yes.
So if you're around the circle of like people that saw you start and you start selling your paintings for £20, it's hard to tell that same circle that never changed and there's no difference to anything, that they should now pay for this same thing £500 later without any difference in anything. If that makes any sense. If your circle is evolving, the person that first started with you that gave support would naturally see the growth in terms of who are the other people that have come to join them in this support form that allows them to now start seeing more value in what
you're doing.
So in terms of, and this is not just in pricing, this is just an opportunity. People come into the exhibitions because my exhibitions are free. I keep all of my exhibitions free, but even with that, you will find in the earlier stages of your thing, it's almost like you beg people to come and enjoy the art.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not for you, but you're begging them.
Yeah.
And what I found is, over time, people start going, oh, I came to support, which is very funny to me. Because are you support that you, like, if you didn't come, did the exhibition go on? Yes.
Yes.
You gained from this exhibition. I gave you something in this exhibition.
Yeah.
So, how, like, do you know what I'm saying? When you say support you, it's not, like, I like people actually knowing that they're coming to gain something and actually gaining from it.
Yeah,
as
like
opposed
I've
being
come
like,
to
"Oh, I'm only coming
enjoy.
to support a friend."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
the
audience
first thing would be like doing all that.
and research.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just summarizing.
So the first thing would be, researching and deciding this is what you're gonna do. Right. The second part, because I only have three major things. The second one would be then creating your ward around those, like the first stage. Creating your ward in the sense that, look, everybody has different priorities. Some people might need to do a part-time job while they walk the arts. You need to create your ward in the sense that this is what I want from the arts, and just figure out what you need to do to get to that. So it might be sacrifices. It might be like, oh, I'm not going to deal with, that's where I did, in my case, where I'm not going to do commissions. Because I wanted to create a ward of people that come specifically to buy the art that I've created that they like or not. You know, it's sacrifices. It's creating your ward by like, okay, I want to do this kind of art, so I'm going to do collaboration with this kind of people, and even allocating specifically what kind of art you do to certain things. So when I say creating your ward, in the ward I created, my digital art works very well with commercial work. So when people want to do commercial things or selling in a commercial gallery or stuff like that, my digital artwork goes, because it's good enough, it's fancy enough, it's nice and clean enough that most people it sits easy on the eye. My old paintings, for example, I channel them to museums and gallery because over time, they're huge paintings that people are not just going to buy. If your house is not big enough to even hold a certain kind of wall,
you can't fit
wouldn't
it in
want to
your
have,
house.
like my house, like for example, my house can't hold some of my canvases.
Yeah.
Because it would be the ceiling, 3 meters down, the painting, and 3 meters down, like, you know what I'm saying? So it needs to be in a place where it's big enough to appreciate and actually gain. So I channel that towards this. Now, if I was trying to channel my oil paintings towards the people that will buy the digital painting, I would go nowhere.
No.
Because they're not going to buy it. It's too big, significantly more expensive than the oil paint, blah, blah, blah. Also, if I was trying to channel my digital paintings to museums and galleries, they don't necessarily give it the same respect as an oil painting on canvas because it's more traditional in the way things are done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And then like the sculptures, that's basically where my workshops come from. So most of the workshops I do is with sculptures. So workshops work with the sculptures. So that essentially just like creating your world based on what you have and what you want to achieve. It doesn't have to be like my one, but it's very tailored. What you want to achieve. So the first part, research and decision of what it is. Second, put those information from the first one into the second, as in now you've done the research and decision. Now you know who you are, you know what you want, you know what's out there, and you channel that to create your own world. And the last part, which is probably the weirdest one, is you can always say it, but it doesn't always happen that way. But it's patience, believing in your timing. I believe as an artist, above everything, your journey gets very interesting. In fact, people like to propagate this idea of struggling artists, and point is, there's different points. You probably have a lot of very shaky periods more than you have the definitive great periods as an artist. And essentially, if there is a lot of faith and patience and belief in the destiny, because I'm not saying believe in yourself, I'm believing that's a no-brainer. Believe in the destiny of where you're going. So, for example, I'm happy to tell people, once upon a time, I was in the studio 24/7, walking there, sleeping on the floor sometimes because I didn't have enough time to go home. Then I run to the gallery. I can tell them all of this. I can tell them at one particular time I was working 3 jobs and spending all my night in the studio trying to paint. Why these are not necessarily good stories or good struggles, it's okay because of where the destination would be. Like, I'm okay to be broke and not have money and be like, it's because I'm not doing commissions and I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that, because I know of the destination. I can then tell people all of the stories of everything that happened to get into the position where it's like, now I'm doing all of this. And if you're shaky about the destination, that's when you're ashamed of, that's when the pressure of wanting to look successful more than be successful comes in. That's when you're afraid of how you look among your peers. That's when you start looking at what's happening from some of your other friends who've chosen to do a certain kind of art that you didn't necessarily choose to do. Or even in my case, my audience, or who I put as my target audience, is people, not the art world. I don't necessarily think of the art world as my main audience. I think of the regular, everyday people as my main audience, because in my head they're more than the art world. And if everybody that was in this place was to just take bits and bits, I would affect more people by dealing with the world than dealing with the art world. And I think just those little having destination of knowing that, so over time I know that I wouldn't get picked for this award, I wouldn't be put in this thing. I best believe every single time that happens, it's always annoying, it's very frustrating, but it's also empowering, because you remember that you're not playing their game. Like, you're like, I'm not waiting for you anyway. I don't do anything. Exactly. You're not the reason why.
So kind of with that in mind, I guess, what is the destiny, or what's the destination you have in your head in 10, 20, 30 years time? Like, what's the goal?
10, 20 years time. So when I say destination, I'm talking a little further than 10, 20 years time. But I would so 10, 20 years time, essentially I would probably be in a position where I'm not just creating my art and doing all the things I've done. I would have had a good few artists that would have come out of the sacrifices or certain things I've made in that sense. So being somebody I personally know that I would have helped out a good few of them and got an exhibition, and now African art or the contemporary African art is now a thing. Or it would be a case of my successes have become testimonies for people to where they've gone there and create the same thing. So as far as the more immediate future, 10 to 20 years, of course there are other ventures that I want to be exploring outside the art, or using the arts to then do things. Because essentially why I picked art as my personal job of what I want to do is because I realized there's a lot of things in the world I want to do. There's a lot of things I'm good at, and essentially art allows me to do everything. Say, for example, the charity thing, like that I was talking about with the recycling art. I could be a philanthropist or dedicate my life to doing charity stuff and whatever. But I could also be an artist who then creates another form and then does this, which can now collaborate with this and then give this sort of thing out. If that makes sense.
It does.
I want to be a teacher at one point. If I gave all my life to the education system and end up getting to a place where I'm teaching, whatnot, that would be successful and that would be good for it. But also through art, I could teach everybody every day, every time, anywhere through the art itself. So essentially being a teacher. So it's more It's more I found things I could do everything I want to do, but through art, and essentially it would just be way bigger. And point is, I would be in a position where I think some of the conversations in terms of like the power given back to the art, reason why I'm writing the book,
Yes.
collaborations with this, telling important stories. Like I've got a documentary that I'm hopefully gonna release later in the. Maybe not this year. It depends on how the whole thing works. Because I feel like this whole uprising may have taken a little bit away from what the topic I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I wanted to specifically talk about stolen art.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is linked to that thing I was telling you about. That without linking everything together,
Yeah.
the place that art is not appreciated most in the world, in that sense, is Africa. This is the place where their art was stolen, and by the way, still right now was never given back.
No.
There might be a link between those. I think there is a link. I think in order to not return the art, because the art was never just art, these were things to kind of represent other things and other spiritualities and all. In order to get the people not to try and get their art power back, they had to tell them autism not important. This other thing is important. This other thing is important. And due to our successful colonization, it's one of the things that they told. Because when you think of art, from an African perspective, art is not painting and drawing stuff. Art is culture, way of life, essentially. If you go to South Africa, it's in the way they dress. They have each colors and stuff. Like if you go to the way of prayer is incantations and sounds, and there is literally an art aspect to everything. So by removing that art aspect to things, our hair,
Yes.
by removing the art aspect, ultimately reduces how much power those particular things have. I mean, and by default, you can see the link between that. Which, by the way, if it was not a big deal, right now, the Britons of the world and the France of the world would have fight so hard not to give back the art.
Yeah, it's so
If that makes
true.
sense, there's a reason why they fight not to give it back.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, there's a reason why rich kids grow up in museums. They go to museums every day and all of that. They tell all of us that it's irrelevant to us, but even the ability to just dream and think of, oh, I want to do something, I feel is even linked to that. Because when you're not creative or when you don't have the ability to just imagine whatever, you deal with based on what you've seen.
Yes.
So you find people in a deprived area will end up taking jobs that only exist in that deprived area. They couldn't dare to just be like, oh, I want to create something that don't exist. Because I mean, you guys might have experiences, but I personally experienced this as a black person, where you say you want to do something. Not even as a black person, I believe this applies to even people in not so rich areas. When you say you want to do something, the first reaction or the first thing you hear people tell you is, who do you know that's done that?
Yes.
Who looks like you that have done that?
Yes, definitely.
As though that has ever
There are
been a
no
factor
black
or
successful
reason why people
artists,
can or can't do it.
You can't do I've definitely been told that.
By no form has that ever been a factor. Like the guys that created anything, every inventor in the world, none of them ever thought, oh, this person did this, so I'm going to do it. So it's never been a factor yet. It's probably the most popular thing you hear among people when it gets to, I want to be this or I want to be that.
Especially when you want to be something that's a bit controversial, quote unquote. Yeah.
And when we say controversial, what exactly is controversial? Just things that you don't see everybody else doing.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Sani.
So, yeah, to kind of summarize, like, thank you so much for the time. Like, since we met you first, I've just always been so inspired by your persistence and your vision and the energy that you bring. And the amount of time you spend just making and being productive, and how you've shaped your life to make sure you have more time to be creative. It's amazing. And that you use your platform and your art for good as well, which is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I try to.
think you really do. Like seeing the kids in the workshop you were running. They just seem to be having so much fun and be really inspired.
So kind of,
I'm trying to even do that on the bigger scale, because like for last year I did it with not just kids this time. I raised it to like adults, and what I found is I probably would send a video, but actually no, the video is on my book. Everybody got so excited. Like I had adults calling other people to come, because it was almost like a chance to be a child again. And I never thought that. You know, once people got to like molding paper into, it's actually quite empowering, because it's like, this is paper, this is tape. You're seeing paper, you're seeing tape.
Yeah.
After a few of these, now you're seeing a full-blown thing that basically feels like came from nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, you
No,
can
it's
sculpt a
amazing.
whole human being, sculpt a whole car, and
Yeah.
like it's quite, it's, you know, and what it is like people's reaction to it. So it's like, not saying we're playing God, but it's almost like you created, like, you know, you've created
Yeah.
something that people are feeling bad for.
Like
It's
this-
happy,
yeah.
it's sad, it's
The
Yeah.
feeling, the feeling of pride and confidence. Because we only really do classes ourselves for adults. So many people
Yeah.
come to a workshop, haven't done it since they're 5, 6, 7 years old,
Yes.
and just to make something tangible in the space of an hour or
Yeah.
half an hour or 20 minutes even, it never gets
Yeah.
old. The feeling of pride, I think, and confidence people get. Where can people find out about you? What's the best social channels or websites and stuff, so people that are listening can find out a bit more? We'll definitely share links and stuff as
Yeah.
well, so people can check out.
Yeah. So me, I'm quite simple. There are a few things that I want to put in there, but I would say everything is at INxSANIxTY.
Yeah.
So my Instagram is probably the most active I am in terms of like paintings or exhibitions coming up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm there doing live videos. I would reply quicker to that. As far as inquiries for buying and selling paintings, that would be in my email, which is at INxSANIxTY@yahoo.com. And so INxSANIxTY is spelled with INxSANIxTY.
Yeah. Cool.
INxSANIxTY. So spelling of INxSANIxTY, just a Sani before the X.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you
And we'll
so
share.
much
Yeah, thank you.
for your
no,
time.
thank you. This was really good. This was really good. I got to like pour out some of these things I've been thinking of. You know, sometimes it gets
It's
lost.
always nice to to kind of evolve your thinking with a conversation. But anyway, thank you so much.
Yes.